job now, a hard physical job. And his father got a job was moving from company to company, and he got a job with this other carpet firm or whatever. He was going out laying the carpets, and it was coming up to St. Patrick's Day. And he said to his boss, I won't be in on Thursday. He said, why? He said, it's St. Patrick's Day. He said, well, St. Patrick's Day isn't that. We're all working on Thursday. You better come in. And he said, what will happen if I don't come in? He said, you're going to be sacked. And he was sacked. He gave his job to celebrate most people, it's the most celebrated day in the world, isn't it? The St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, yeah.
But to hear that story, that people lost their jobs because they marked the day of St. Patrick on the island is another glimpse.
We'll get into a lot of that later. Tim read out the headlines of the story of Joe Duffy. But behind those headlines is a very personal story, which I find absolutely fascinating, Joe. I want to take you back to the 27th of January 1955, when Joe Duffy appeared in this world.
56.
56.
Years on the J.
You look years. But can you talk a little bit about the Dublin you were born into in the mid-50s?
I was born at home because I wanted to be near my mother. I was born at home what's in Mountjoy Square in Dublin. I don't know people. It's near Croke Park. It's 3 minutes from Croke Park. They had 2 rooms in a tenement, believe it or not, in 1956. And one room was dark and damp, and my mother was afraid to go into it. So we basically, I'm told, lived in one room. She had 2 children in that house. My first eldest brother, James, who was born in 1953, he was born under Rotunda. These are stories that are resonant all over the country. My mother, I don't even think, Gerry, she was very young. She was about 23. I don't even think, and I'm not being funny, I don't even think she knew about babies. And she was in the Rotunda, went into labour with my older brother James, and was in extreme pain, and was screaming. And the matron slapped her on the face, slapped her to stop her carry on. And she had 5 more children after that. And obviously hospitals were progressing, but the remaining 5 children were all born at home because of that incident. But the Dublin was 56, it was grey, that's my memory of it.
You were living in the worst housing conditions in Europe at the time.
Yeah, at the tenements. This is what I try to explain to my own children, and this is how far we've come, and for all of us, I think, on the island. Well, my mother was born in 1929. She's still alive. She's 93, just got another Conor McGregor tattoo. But my mother was born in 1929. They were talking in Dáil Éireann, which is about 7 or 8 years old. They were talking about abolishing workhouses in 1929. And that's I say that to my own children. That's your granny, and that's the word. And her mother, I remember in 1966, going to see her mother in a place called Close Square in Dublin. It's called Richmond Barracks. It's now turned into a memorial. And Close Square in Dublin was a disused army barracks up to the independence. It was where all the leaders of the 1916 Rising were brought to initially after they were marched from the GPO down the Rotunda and up to Close Square in Inchicore. And I remember, I would have been about 10, so it's 1966. I remember going down to visit my granny in Close Square, where she lived with one of her sons who was special needs, so to speak, as we say today. And she was sitting in front of an open fire, cooking. And they'd no indoor toilet. There was a latrine across the way. No electricity. That's 3 years after John F. Kennedy came to Ireland. You know, this whole thing of that we matured as a nation. But those were the difficult times.
What about your dad? You mentioned your mother.
Yeah, my father was a very, very funny man. His name was Jimmy. He was born in Church Street in Dublin. He was born in the same tenement that his mother was born in. Do you believe that, Gerry? He was born in the same tenement, 89 Church Street, that his mother was born in. And his mother, who knew Aggie, the conditions were awful. In 1913, a tenement down the road, she would have been about 12, a tenement collapsed into the street and killed 10 people. Just from decay dereliction. She was there on the day that Kevin Barry was arrested across the road. There was a raid. It was in the War of Independence. There was a raid on Monk's Bakery. The British soldiers from Linenhall Barracks around the corner used to come down and collect bread every day. And Kevin Barry was in it. Kevin Barry's only 16, and he was in an ambush team. And one British soldier was killed, one rebel was killed. Kevin Barry hid under the bread van, and under the army lorry, hoping that he wouldn't be seen. And then when the army lorry went to take off, some woman shouted, "Oh, geez, will you watch the child under the..." And he was caught. And that woman, my granny told me, was ostracised for the rest of her life because of a complete
innocent mistake.
Yeah.
How did you get out of those tenements?
We get council house, and it was a lottery. There was a new estate being built. There was loads of new estates being built: Ballyfermot, Cabra, Marino, Walkinstown, then later Coolock, Darndale, all this whole necklace of massive working class estates.
So like Ballyfermot was luxury to you?
Yeah, well, it was called Ballyfar out. Everyone thought it was too far. And my mother got her father to cycle out with a trolley, a boxcar on the back of his bike. And that's how they moved. They had nothing to move anyway. That's how they moved from Mountjoy Square out to Ballyfermot.
How did your mother cope with that? Because at that stage, there was 6 of you all together.
Yeah, 6 of us, yeah.
Your father, unfortunately, had a drink problem.
Yeah,
he was very keen on the drink.
Yeah.
And you said it ruled and ruined his life.
I said that in the book as well, yeah, because he's such potential. He went off. My early memories of my father working in England. He worked on a building site. My earliest memories, went on for a long number of years, was going to the local butchers that had a phone box, an old style phone box, press button A, press button B, if you want your money back. And he would ring every Saturday, that butcher's.
From England?
Yeah, from England, from a pub in England, as you sort of, well, that's, what else could he do, and in one sense. And then we'd hear his faint voice once a week for 3 or 4 years. Then he came home and got a packing job in Glen Abbey, which was a hosiery company. He was known as the Lord Mayor of Glen Abbey because he was so well liked and funny and gregarious. He worked 5.5 days a week. He was never late for work. He got up every morning at 5:45, regardless of what went on. It was Monday morning, and he'd been out drinking on the Sunday. Never late for work. And he'd stand downstairs. O'Donnell Abu would come on the radio when RT used to start, and then he had a statue of St. Joseph the Walker, which we still have, right? Even though we knocked the head off an accident. But he'd stand there every morning before he left, and he'd say a prayer to St. Joseph the Walker, bless himself. And during Lent, he'd go to Mass every single day.
Goodness.
Every single day, yeah.
How did his alcoholism, his drink problem, how did that impact on you?
Just he wasn't there, Gerry. You know what I mean? He wasn't there he never came to our school. He'd come in, and now he wouldn't drink between Monday and Friday, you see. This was a bizarre thing. But when Friday came, when the money came, when he got the money, and remember your wages those days was in cash, okay? When unfortunately, that happened to so many families, he would go drinking. And my mother would wait, and we would wait for him to come home. And he never handed up his pay packet. He never, you know, there was I did it to my mother when I started working at 13. I had this fetish about it. I couldn't open it. I had to give me a little brown envelope, the little sticky stuff. And but he never had, we'd be going through his pockets to see what money was left. Then he'd be back up on Saturday morning, again, out to work. But then Saturday was the worst day because he would go, finish at lunchtime, and go on the drink with his pals. And then he'd come home at 5 o'clock. And unfortunately, I know a lot about this because I became a social worker and did a lot of stuff on people who have various problems. But he would come home at 5 o'clock, go up, have a sleep, and then he would come down and engineer a row with my mother, my sainted mother, so he could storm out of the house and go back down to the pub. And I remember one evening, I was so awfully upset about this, the way the things he was saying to her, and I know he was saying them in drink, that I pushed him out through the back door of our house, which was a makeshift back door, and it had that glass in it with the chicken wire. Did you ever see that glass? Remember it?
Yeah.
Brazil was not around now. And I said, Daddy, stop saying that to Mum. And I pushed him out through. Now, he didn't fall or anything. He stood out in the backyard and he got his fist. And next I see his fist coming through this chicken wire glass, right? Just so angry. And I remember he stormed out of the house with a hanky round his arm, which was badly ripped. And my mother said, go out after him and bring him down to Dr. Stevens' hospital. And which is what the Royal Victoria would be to the Falls Road or whatever, that distance. And we got on a bus. Went down, he was stitched up. And we had a great chat when he was being stitched up. We got back on the bus to go home. I think I was about 11, right? So this would have been 7:30, 8 o'clock. And at Downey's pub where he drank, we got off at Downey's and I arrived back home on my own. And Mabel, my mother, said, where's your father? I said, he's in Downey's. Back in Downey's. But anyway, and you see, the thing was, it was a frustration, Gerry. I think he was very intelligent, very sharp, very, very sharp, very big on politics. But he left school at 11, you know, and he ended up a packer. He had so much more potential. And I think it was the frustration, and he died at 58.
Yeah.
58.
His potential obviously rubbed off on you, but you were always quite bright at school. Weren't you the first in the whole area to do the leaving cert?
No, the first of my family to do
First in the family to do the leaving cert.
I was kind of the first in the area to get into Trinity.
That's interesting that you chose Trinity. Why Trinity? Because
it was the closest college to the house. It was on the bus route.
But didn't Archbishop McQuaid, weren't they banning Catholics to go to Trinity?
He had lifted the ban.
Well, that's it.
Yeah. But when you mention John Charles McQuaid, I really think if anyone, we've been talking about him on the programme for various reasons. He was Archbishop, talking about religion, he was Archbishop of Dublin from 1940 to 1972. And I've read every book about him. He's the most fascinating individual. Now, he did a lot of very negative. Now, someone rang in the other day to say her father was a paediatrician in Dublin, one of the first paediatricians in Ireland, and he's based in Our Lady's Children's Hospital in Crumlin, which is still there, a fantastic hospital. And he was asked by the government of the day, which would have been John Lamass, to set up a working group on trying to amalgamate the children's hospital. There was Harcourt Street, which was Protestant hospital, so to speak, and Crumlin, which was a Catholic ethos. How would that make a difference now you treat some children? But anyway, and he got them all to agree. There was also another small hospital, St. Ultan's. Conor Ward got them all to agree that they would move to Crumlin, which was then a big site. And that would be the National Children's Hospital. And Archbishop McQuaid vetoed it because he was patron. And he owned the land. The Archdiocese owned that. And he vetoed it. And this son of Conor Ward, who's still alive, he's 99, he came on, he said his father said to him recently, because you know the whole controversy down south about the 4 billion hospital that just gets more and more expensive, that we could have had a National Children's Hospital in 1970, except for the influence and the power of John Charles McQuaid, an incredible figure in church history down south.
You got to Trinity. What did Mum and Dad think? What did the rest of the family think RJ was at Trinity? RJ was a third level education.
Yeah, well, I'd been working. I wanted to go because I wanted to be a social worker. I remember a discussion in the kitchen. Well, you see, I've been working, so I've been handing up my pay back.
Yeah.
Now I was going from not working on a Friday to going to Trinity on the Monday, and not only not handing up a pay packet the following Friday, but needing one for bus fares or whatever. And I remember when it was I said to them, it was a Saturday afternoon actually, and my father said, well, what are we going to do for the money? You know, it's not just we have to pay for you, we're sacrificing it. And I just remember my mother saying, let him do what he wants to do. Just let him do what he wants to do.
How did you cope financially?
Great difficulty. I worked a bit part-time and it was a very frugal lifestyle. I used to bring in a flask every day. I bring in my own sandwiches. I never went, for the first year, I never left the library. Never left it, because I'd been out of college for a few years and I didn't think I'd be able to get through first year. And I went in every day of the week, including Saturday. And there's an event on at Trinity every year, it's back on this year, it's called the Trinity Ball, where the whole campus, anyone knows the campus, it's turned into this massive, because it's enclosed, this massive party venue. There'll be 15, 20 bands, dancers, marquees. And I remember leaving the first year, this is a true story, I remember leaving the place on the library at 9 o'clock, this Trinity Ball, let's go this exactly, nearly midnight, 9 o'clock, on a Friday night. I was wondering why were they putting up all the lights? Were they making a movie or something? Right? And then I went home, got back on the bus, came in to study. There was a place for me to study on a Saturday morning, and I'm walking through Trinity and see all these beer bottles. And I say, what happened here? And then I remember saying to them, said Trinity Ball. Did you ever hear the Trinity Ball? I didn't. I was recluse for the first year because I was worried sick about not passing my exams.
Where did the Catholic Church come into your life?
Yeah, well, it was true. Another incredible character, my memory, is John Charles McQuaid, the first, such was his power, the first thing, like Ballyfermot was built during his time in office, and the thing he built around Dublin was this necklace of massive basilicas. A lot of them are being torn down now, of no great architectural merit, but they could hold 3,000-4,000 people, and they completely dominated the first big building in Ballyfermot, before the supermarket, before a library, and before I went to school in Parmesan because there wasn't enough space in Ballier. The first thing was the Church of the Assumption. And the man who ran it was a man called Monsignor Canon Troy from Kerry. And you would imagine big, red-blooded, white-haired, carried a stick, had the monsignorial outfits, the cape and the cloak, and he ran Ballyfermot more than any other politician, more than any community leader. And just to show you the power of him, one, Barry had a group of locals, because there wasn't any shops there. It's crazy. And there was vans, you know, the van shops. I'm sure you had them. But the vans are great for, you know, you get your stuff on ticket or whatever. But they were quite expensive. So a group of people got together to try and set up a co-op shop. We call it Ballyfermot Co-op. It was set up. They opened it on DC's Road, and it lasted for 1 week. Why? Because Canon Troy stood up at the pulpit and said, "This is communism. This is communism. Do not support this shop." And they were gone within a week. They were gone within it. That was the paradigm. Then he brought in this thing that we all had to say the rosary at home at night. Did you have that? At 6 o'clock, he wanted to have this rosary crusade.
Father Pitton did that with us here.
Well, we did it for one night. We're all kneeling down in the living room. We're all facing the wall because we're going to laugh, right? Including my parents, I think. And this was this whole community that everyone at Ballyfermot, with the 40,000 people, would all kneel down at 6 o'clock and say the rosary for Canon Troy. And I'd say that lasted. But he did an incredible influence.
But the Catholic Church did influence you.
Oh, yeah,
even when you went to Trinity.
Yeah.
You went to daily mass.
I did, yeah.
And at one stage you said that priesthood had a calm attraction for you.
Yeah, it did. Very calm, very calm attraction. Yeah, I loved the space, and I loved the meditation, and I loved the quiet of it. And then I got involved in the Catholic Youth Council, who were brilliant, absolutely brilliant, under a brilliant priest, John Fitzpatrick, who's still alive, thank God. And I got involved in running summer projects, and I was employed by the Catholic Youth Council to run summer projects. And they were just keeping children occupied for the summer. There was nothing, there was no religious aspect of it. Then I was asked, through John Fitzpatrick, to read at the Papal Mass in Galway in '79. And I think the reason, I was president of the Student Union in Trinity, and I think there was two reasons. John had a devilish sense of humour. The two reasons he was in charge of it was the youth mass. He asked me to read, one, because I had a Dublin working class accent and it was a different voice, and two, I was president of the Trinity College Student Union, and it was two fingers to Trinity, the Protestant university. Here we have the Catholic. And I tell the joke, tell the story that it was on the altar in Ballybrit in Galway with Pope John Paul in 1979, and on one side of me, Pope John Paul was behind me obviously, one side of me was Father Michael Cleary, you all remember, and the other side was Bishop Eamon Casey. And I remember saying at the subsequent years, which is the cheap bell gag, that myself and the Pope had one thing in common that day. We were the only two on that altar that didn't have children.
You mentioned the fact that you were president of Trinity Union, you then became the president of the Students' Union in Ireland.
Yeah.
You wrote a letter to the Irish Times because an accent that you have, you wouldn't have heard too many of your Dublin accents at Trinity. And you wrote to the Times and you said that in the area that you come from, D10, you had a 1% chance of getting to third level education. If you came from D4, you had a 44 times.
44 times more.
Is that where you got your social injustice thing from?
Yeah. I remember going into Trinity. I remember the letter to the Irish Times was prompted by an article in the Irish Times. They'd opened the arts block, which is in, people don't know, on Nassau Street there, and there was a new gate into Trinity. And the headline in the Irish Times was, Trinity opens up to the people of Dublin. Okay? And I remember the opening line, because I remember where I composed it in my head after reading that article. I was standing at a bus stop in Ballyfermot, and the opening line is, I think, lest we be overcome by the fizz and froth that has accompanied the opening of a new gate to Trinity College, let me state some facts. And the facts were, someone from Mount Merion was 44 times more likely to end up in Trinity than someone from Ballyfermot. And then there was a slew of letters in and out. Then a group of other students came up and said, we agree. And then there was the Minister for Education or somebody was coming into Trinity, and we organised a protest. And then I stood for president of the Students' Union. And
you fill it in very well, obviously.
Yeah, I did. I liked it. I loved Trinity. And my two boys went to Trinity. Yeah, I love it. I don't think they love me now. They expelled me at one stage.
Well, not only did they expel you, you left Trinity with a degree and a prison sentence.
Yeah, because we were protesting Trinity about the way the money was being spent. They had scholars and commons and fellows, and it was very Oxford type setup. They used to, at Commons each evening, they used to, someone would get up in the pulpit and toast Queen Elizabeth, the founder, the Queen that founded Trinity College in 1542, whatever it was. And we wanted to get rid of that as well. And Trinity, of course, completely and totally overreacted to us. They completely and totally. They didn't know what hit them. Mainly because we were a product of free. You know the way Bernadette Devlin and Eamon McCann and Michael Farrell all talk about how free third level education and the Secondary School Act in 47 appeared, wasn't it?
Yes.
That created them because they all were able to move on in education. But the 67 Act in the Republic, where Donald O'Malley introduced free second level education. That's the only way I went. I wouldn't have been able to go.
Oh,
and we were the group that arrived in Trinity about 7 or 8, 9 years later, were the product of that free second level education. So we were completely different background. They didn't understand their accents. They didn't understand what we were on about social justice and all this nonsense. And one of the remember, Trinity at the time had some of the finest 16th century minds in Ireland. They really have. And one of them, a historian, he said to the papers when we were on a protest, he said, we beat the rebels in 1916 and we beat them again. They're completely overreacted. And then they expelled us, then they got an injunction. And
you spent 2 weeks in Mountjoy?
Yeah, but that was when I was president of the USI, when it was health cutbacks.
Yeah.
Health cutbacks.
Oh, was that like?
See, when I went into Mountjoy, I met half my road. I remember one of them, Timmy Dunn was his name. The minute there was 8 of us. We breached an injunction. We occupied the health board offices, stopped and take medical cards. They were taking medical cards off students. And Timmy said to me, come in, quick. Duffy, come in, here, quick. Now, the 8 of you, keep your head down. Right? They're going to be giving you extra visits. Don't tell anybody. Okay? If you get any little perks like a transistor, you keep it to yourself. Right? No boasting, no shouting, no showing off. Right? Or you'll suffer. Okay? And that was the best bit of advice I got. The best bit of advice. Keep your head down. We got extra visits. TDs were coming in. We told nobody. I got a typewriter in, because we all said we were studying, first time we ever studied this, and I got a typewriter in to write letters to the paper and all this nonsense. But you wouldn't, his advice was, keep your head down, keep your head down. And that's what we did.
It's not bad advice. Yeah, I've read, you describe yourself as nowadays as a Christian socialist.
Yeah, I still,
what the hell is a Christian
I
socialist?
don't know. It's like what one American senator said once in the 1960s when they were trying to ban pornography, and a journalist said, "Well, what is pornography? Can you describe it?" He said, "No, but I know it when I see it." And who was I influenced by? I used to read Paulo Freire in South America about education, and the South American church at that stage was a very, as we know, Archbishop Romero was a very active, socially active church. And I saw it, it's a weird, I just wanted, in all my naivety, and that's why I became a social worker, I just wanted to do good or something. I just wanted to, and you know that phrase, you're a do-gooder, which I've been often called, that's one of the social workers. You're a do-gooder, and I always said, well, I'd rather be a do-gooder than a do-badder. Yeah. And it's just trying to remember the sense of community, the sense of it's a small world. I'm really conscious of that. Especially in Ireland, that you try, and I said to my own children, you only talk about someone as if they can hear you. As if they can hear you. No backbiting, if you have anything difficult to say it to their face, or don't say it at all.
Do you believe in God, Jim?
I still can't work out if we invented God or God invented us. But the one thing I do know, and this is true the meaning of life, that every civilization, no matter where they emanated from, despite the fact that they have no communication, every civilization has reached for a higher power. Now, is that the higher power telling them, or is that them? Is that us as humans? But what I do believe is, and I think we've learned it during the lockdown, that we live in an incredible world, from nature to truck drivers to nurses to doctors to knowledge to education. We live in an incredible world that seems, in the main, now I know there's issues here, but the world that we live in, and I go back to my mother, 1929, still alive today, the Dáil was debating workhouses. But we live in a world that seems to have one overriding objective, that is to do better, to improve. I know all the improvements aren't, and then you have to talk about war, but to improve. Now, where does that propulsion come from? In us as humans. And I think that rich tapestry of life. So I don't know the answer. And then the next question I ask people, do you believe in an afterlife? I just don't know. But I tell you one thing, if I think I'm on my way out, I will start studying for my finals. I'll start reading the Bible again.
You got married, or you met your wife when you were at Trinity?
I went to Trinity, which was the richest university in the country, we were told. The cream of Ireland were there, rich and thick, as he used to say. I went to Trinity in the hope that I'd meet someone from Foxrock. Foxrock in Dublin is like the Malone Road in Belfast, isn't it? And I ended up marrying a barman's daughter from Cabra. She had the juice and I had the juice.
But you had a green duffel coat.
Yes.
But she had a grey one.
It's green and grey, yeah.
You were Joe Duffel for a long time.
I first met her when I asked her to vote for me.
Is that really?
Yeah. I don't think she voted for me. She hasn't voted for me since. I know that. Anytime there's a row in the house, it's normally 3-1 or 2-1.
There was a quote that I remember, because after the birth of your triplets, you said that if you want proof that there is a God, the granting of 3 children at the same time to my wife June was a decision so wise that it could only have been made in heaven.
Yes.
So you do believe it?
I do believe in God in that sense.
In that sense.
If anyone, now I know these things are, if anyone was capable of rearing 3 children at the same time, when her husband was traipsing around Ireland and abroad, trying to make Gayborn a household name on the radio, and I was away a lot of the time, if anyone was capable of it, it was June Meany. And the kids will tell you that themselves today.
What age are they today?
They're 26. That's just like having one 78-year-old around. And they're all gone. One's a teacher, one works in science, and one works in the civil service.
Obvious.
But it's down to June Bean, and it's not down to Joe Duffy. I tell you. All I'm known for is my dad jokes when I go out with them, and it's embarrassing them. And my daughter said to me the other night, one of my, I'm sure it's the same with a lot of your family, two of them are into vegetarianism and Greta Thunberg and all that carry on. And one of my sons who works for Accenture, he has a few bob, but he won't buy new clothes, he won't wear leather, he doesn't believe, he believes in recycling everything. No, he's not a crusty, but he's not far off. And my daughter says to me the other day, said I was in St. Anne's Park on Saturday with friends of mine, and she's a teacher in the area, and she said, I saw Ronan walking towards me, and I made the girls go away because I didn't want to introduce him. And I said, what's that because of what he wears and what he looks like? Because he's very friendly with it. And she said, yeah. I said, that's terrible. She said, I'm the same. I wear shorts and runners. I never wear long trousers suit outside of RTE. And she said, I do it for you as well, but the people I'm with normally know that you are my father. So she accuses me of the same, making a show.
You have quite a few heartbreaks in your life as well. There was a couple. The first one was your brother Brendan.
Yeah, Brendan.
Killed in a car accident.
No, that was Aidan. Sorry, Aidan was the youngest. He was born, I remember him being born on January the 19th, 1966. I was downstairs. It was 6 o'clock. We had a television, black and white television, and the Angelus Bell came on. And when the Angelus Bell came on, there was also a program called Buntu's Concha to learn Irish. And as that was starting, I heard Aidan's cry from upstairs. He was born at 6 o'clock. Just almost 10 years to the day, I was 10 after me. And we had one sister, and she was just a year older than Aidan, and I was tasked with minding Aidan in the pram. I had to bring him everywhere with me. And he was, again, very, very bright, go-getter. Difficulty going to school because he didn't want to be away from my mother. And he was killed in a car crash when he was 25.
That hit you very hard.
Oh, very hard, yeah. Very. I was in work, I was filling in. I was in a summer program. And I'd just done a program with Christy Hennessy, the great Christy Hennessy, down in Tralee, and I came back and we were doing the next, it's in the slot I'm now in when Lyra would not be on, when Mario wouldn't be on during the summer. And I remember going into studio at 1:30, and at 1:30 headlines came on and said there's been a car crash in Maynooth. A truck has collided with a car, which in turn collided with a bus, and 2 people were killed. And I remember saying to the sound operator, God, that sounds absolutely horrific. And then when I came out, Dermot McCarthy was the RT chaplain, was sitting up waiting on my desk with a few of my close colleagues to tell me Aidan was dead. And I then had to, and I'm sure people here had to do it in very difficult circumstances as well. And they said, will you go and tell your mother? Right? And I remember ringing the next door neighbour and saying to Deirdre Carr, Deirdre, where's Mabel? She said, it was an August day, 40 years ago, beautiful night. And he said, Mabel's sitting at the back of the chair, looking at the sun. Right? And that's the last time she ever looked at the sun with any joy. Because I knocked on that door and I said, Mammy has some very bad news, Aidan's been killed. And she collapsed. And then her mother came up, this woman who lived in Close Square. And I remember her that night in the house saying, why didn't God take me instead of Aidan? Why didn't God take me? You know how many people up here have said that in the awful times that this Northern Ireland has had. And my mother still, to this day, Gerry, if there's a car crash, which there are much less than there were now, then she thinks, she knows every car. Oh, isn't that terrible? You see that chap was killed up in Sligo, isn't it just getting worse? And I said, Mammy, it's not getting worse, the figures are getting better with motorways and seat belts and cars. It's a wound, it's a wound that may get smaller but never fully healed.
Did your faith help you at that stage?
Yeah, but I think the biggest help was friends and family. And the ritual of the funeral was important. And we carried this coffin. I insisted that the hearse go to our house at Green, and that we remove Aidan's remains from the hearse, and we carried him the distance to the church. We took turns that he was being carried home. I remember saying that on the day. Yeah, they did, and a very good friend of mine who was a priest at the time, and I had two good friends who were priests. We used to go on holidays together. They were very, very good. And the priests at the time in Ballyfermot were very good as well. And my mother, she's now in a nursing home, but she put down to the church every single day. Every single day. And she did the church collection up to about 2 years ago. But she never handed up the money. You know, she only got to Las Vegas to take Conor McGregor. No, she did the church collection up till she was 92. And she got great. So as far as I'm concerned, when I see, and I had to check myself on the radio today because I did something wrong, which I'm always saying, and I mocked religion with one line that came out, which I shouldn't have come out with, but I did apologise. I always respect people who get great solace from the church. Great solace, and everywhere I go, I love cathedrals. If I'm away, I always go into a cathedral. I'll always light candles. I was on the Aran Islands there for a week over the summer, and Inishmaan, the middle one, they have a beautiful church, and I went in there every single morning and lit candles.
Do you still go to Mass on a daily basis?
No.
On a weekly basis?
No.
On a monthly basis?
No.
You've given up on organised religion?
Yeah, in fairness, my wife and my children are much more anti the institutional church than I am. Even though I've heard so much on Live 9 especially about the sins of the church and things that happen. I still know there are so many good people, not just in the church in terms of ministry, there's so many good people who go to church, who still have great faith, who find great solace in the church. There's still some great priests, fantastic priests, whose only calling in life is to help other people. The programme that's going out on Sunday is Meaning of Life. I did it with the Poor Clares down in Galway, they're in closed order. They are inspiration. Women who go into ministry, we met two of them this evening, Renee and Martine, it's serene, the feeling. And that serenity is a feeling that we don't get that often in this life.
Do you have it in this life?
Yeah, I not all the time, because I take my job very, very seriously. I get serenity from painting, from walking, from reading. I don't watch much telly, never had none telly anyway.
No,
since Gerry.
I'm
still in post-traumatic stress syndrome. My Friday nights have never been the same.
You're not the fellow presenters.
No, but I get just anything that helps me turn off from the job, from the pressures of life. And now, by the way, I'm so blessed. I've no money worries whatsoever, right? My 3 children, thank God, are healthy, and their mental health, which is really big for me, and the pressure, their mental health is good. But I still think moments of serenity, you get it, I maybe get it now, I get it in the church, looking at a stained glass window, or Clarendon Street Church in Dublin is absolutely beautiful church. St. Peter's we spoke about today in the programme in Fisbury is a beautiful church. It's those serene moments. I get it in an art gallery, and I get it in a museum. I love the Ulster Museum, which is both an art gallery and a museum. Yeah, I do. I wish I got more of them. But I'm not discontented.
Yeah. How many fire engines have you got?
I've over 300 model fire engines. Sad but true. And for my 60th birthday, which is only a few months, for my 60th birthday, somebody wanted to buy me an ex-fire engine, which I would have loved.
A real one?
Yeah, a real one. Like a Green Goddess. Remember the Green Goddess?
Yeah.
And I remember, I'm a fire buff, so I know a lot of the fire people in Dublin. I know the chief fire officer is a friend of mine, Mark Keeley. And I said to him, Mark, if I get a fire engine from everywhere, will you even let me answer the false alarms? No, I'm obsessed, but I don't know why. Someone said my mother must have been frightened by a fire engine when she was pregnant by me, but about 300, yeah. And they're not toys. Any children come in the house, the room is locked.
They are toys.
The room is locked.
They are toys.
And what's the difference between what's the difference between a toy fire engine and a model fire engine?
They're both toys.
That's the mirrors. The models, the series models have mirrors.
I mentioned earlier your other brother, Brendan. And I don't want just all the sad stories in life, but I think they get to know you, you've got to know the family. And he had an addiction as well.
Like so many in Ballyfermot.
Of course.
Like so many in Ballyfermot. He was, I don't know what happened, Brendan. He's still alive, I know he's doing well. He hasn't had a drink in years. Since that book came out, actually.
It wasn't drink though, with
drink and drugs, drugs initially, and glue when he was 14. You know that awful scourge. Cities and rural areas have gone through it as well. Then heroin. And like, I remember, we just didn't know what to do. We just didn't know. I tried to reason with him, and there'd be fights in the house, and my mother was minor. And I remember ringing the drug squad, the Ballyfermot, and asking them to raid the house. To raid our 6 Claddagh Green.
That was a big decision.
Yeah, to try and give my mother some comfort. And the biggest decision we ever made, Brandon, and I've written about it, so it's public domain. The biggest decision we ever made, Brandon was involved in a robbery when he was drugged. No one was injured, thank God. But he robbed a man in Petra. 2 of them did. And they were caught. And my mother was crestfallen, bereft. And we went down to the court. Okay, I think there might have been 3 of them actually. And I said to Megan, I was about 19 at the time, I said, you are not going bail. He did it, and he's going to pay, he has to take the consequences. And I said, Mammy, if he's in Mountjoy, you know where he is. You know he's being fed. So the judge said he set bail at 500 quid or whatever. The first family stood up, here. Second family stood up, said here. And neighbour stood up and said no. That was the most important, one of the biggest decisions she ever made, and that woke him up a bit. But thankfully he's doing well. And again, Gerry, I'm telling you, my brothers will tell you this, my other brothers, Brendan is the brightest, sharpest, you meet him, I meet him seldom now because he lives on his own, though he still goes up to see my mother. And he knows more about politics. If I said I was being interviewed by Gerry Kelly, he would be able to tell me everything about you. Everything about you. He's very well read, very bright. But his life, his potential, he had his own business at one stage. But applying 4 fellas, and he went back on the drink and the drugs, and it destroyed him again. And thankfully now he doesn't work, but because of his ill health, but it's wasted potential. Wasted potential.
Did you ever think you were there for the grace of God?
Yes, I do.
What's the aim to you? Education?
Education, yeah. I think it's education, yeah. And I don't know if I'm saved fully at this stage, but yeah, that's why I'm evangelical about education. Yeah. That's why I want, down south, I've been pushing this line since the pandemic began, that the 3rd level college around Ryan, everyone should be like 2nd level. If you want to go, go. You want to go, go. And then people, it started a bit of a debate down south, and then you'd hear people, and that's a stupid idea because they'd all leave after a year, or they all might leave after a year. And I said, great. No day of education is ever wasted. Ever wasted. Even exam, diploma, degree, you don't need them. But no day in education. And I just think it's cruel down south when you see it happened again a month ago. 60,000, 70,000 applied for 3rd level, and there's about 35,000, 40,000 places. Why isn't there more places? Like a Zoom lecture can be to one person or 1,000 people. It's the same thing. But anyway, I just believe education should be open and free, and it's a right, not a privilege.
I'm conscious of time because there were so many things to talk about. You worked in RTE, you worked on the Gay Burn show, you were fixing everything and you're reporting all right for Gay on the radio show. How did you get into Liveline? Because Joe, can I tell you something? Yeah. I don't think I have ever seen anyone so suited to a job and so good at it as you are at Liveline. And I think your broadcasting destiny has been reached on this program.
You mean I'm finished? Yeah, listen, that was accidental as well. I was on the Gay Born show. I was on Gay for a long number of years.
The master.
His anniversary is coming up on November the 4th. He was so giving, so generous. You know, to other, you saw even on the toy show when Gay used to do it, all the staff were on the toy show. You know, he was not threatened or frightened by anybody else. And then I filled in. Gay wanted to lighten his workload, so Monday and Tuesday on the Gay Burn show became available. I started doing that, and I did it for a year. And I picked up a paper one morning. I was gone. Someone else gave it to someone else. I had no job in the place, and I remember ringing my boss and saying, "I see whoever was doing it. I think it was Garrett or Garrett, yeah." And he said, "Oh, we'll find something for you. We'll find something for you." And I didn't. I was on holidays with the kids at the time, and I was on contract. And then I came back. Then I got a job as a reporter on 5/7 Live. Immediately was sent over to cover the Albert Band's libel trial back in '95 or whatever. Then the summer fill-in came up, and it was just, it's like Gay. I remember Gay saying to me once when I was working on his program, I was asked to do something at the weekend for television, something, a reporter, small thing. I remember saying to him, "Will I do it?" He said, "Why wouldn't you?" He said, "It's what you do. Do it. So you won't be doing it all your life. You're not digging coal in a rig now. Do it. Just do it. Can you do it? Are you physically?" Yeah. He said, "Just do it." And that was my motto. I do what they asked me to do. Cut the grass, do anything at all. Look after Pat Kenny's makeup or whatever. Do anything. That was some job. That was a lot of heavy lifting every morning. And that was just for the radio program. So I did it, and then I filled in one summer, and then time and chance, Gay gave up the radio force, and then he gave up the late, rightly so, and he'll tell you. And Marion got the 9 o'clock slot, and they wanted to put someone in the Liveline slot. I had done it in '98, and this is in one sense, it is an awful thing. The Oma bombing, August '98, and the Oma bombing happened on a Saturday. I was presenting live, filling in for Liveline. And I remember ringing the producer and said, "Let's go up to Oma," just to get a sense of the devastation. And we went up to Oma that evening, and we stayed there till the following evening. And we met the firefighters and just talking to people, get a sense of that devastation, that hole, that grief, that silence. And for the following 2 weeks, the whole program was about Oma. Every single day, Liveline was about Oma. And my visit there had informed the tone I took. I tried to take anyway. And then I remember then shortly thereafter, Marion was given the slot, and then the boss at the time said to me, "You did such a good job in Oma, do you want to try Liveline in December?" Which was when Marion was finishing. And she said, I said, "Marion is loved. She's been doing it for 14 years. She's loved. God rest her." And she said, "But the good thing is, all the focus will be on Marion replacing Gay. You go in under the radar." And Helen Shaw said to me, she was head of the BBC here, won't say radio. Helen Shaw said to me, "You're going to take a hit listener-wise. Okay, the first book, as we call it, you know, the figures, the ratings in radio." She said, "You're going to take a hit." She said, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about what the papers say." Dive line, one of the papers said, and all these guys. He said, "Find your own voice." I said, "Because I'm not going to come, unless a year from now we're in big trouble, I'm not going to come near you. Just try and find your own voice." And that's
all your life experiences almost led you to there.
But is that not the great thing about being a journalist and a broadcaster? That's what I love about it. That everything you do in life it comes in handy at some stage.
Yes.
At some stage. And if you're, the only thing I had, Gerry, I remember Mr. Long in my 6th class at Ballyfermot, he called me up one day and said, Duffy, you're the most curious boy in the class. Right? Now, I thought he meant inquisitive. Yeah. He meant odd. But I think I am inquisitive. Yeah, right? I just love finding out. That's what I say, when I try and say to people who are fed up, and you've met them in your life, and there's some of them are very close with some of us, it happens to us ourselves. I remember saying to somebody who was very, very, very unwell, and I said, try and think that today you're going to hear a new piece of music. You're going to meet a person you never met before. You're going to see a book or a television or a piece of art that you've never seen before. And just think of everything that's out there. And the second thing I say to them is, you're not staying alive. I'm thinking of one individual here now. You're not staying alive for yourself, because you don't want to stay alive. You're staying alive for others. You're going to be a giver. You're going to be a giver. You're going to make today different for somebody. Now that could mean buying someone a present, that could mean being with your kids, but just forget about yourself. Forget about yourself for the time being. You're just going to be a giver. And there's no greater sensation in life than being a giver. Be it an organ donor, is there a greater thing we us alive can do than give an organ? Be a giver, be a giver, be a giver. That's
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love Dave Line as well.
Yeah, I know. Did you write that headline?
I know. No, but I used to do a program called Lifestyle.
Oh, yes.
And they criticised it and they says, I watched Lifestyle last night. Said another life or style. That was the end of that. Joe, look, I want to talk a little bit about this book. This is a magnificent book. I'm sure you've seen it. The Children of the Troubles. And it tells the story of the 186 children.
Yeah. We've heard of 3 more since.
Really?
Yeah, families.
This stems from the book you did about
Children of the Rising, which I did, which was an accidental project, but I did it in 2016, chronicling the lives of 40 children that nobody, including myself, I didn't know anyone died. When I started in 2014, I didn't know if any children had been injured, or I didn't know if any children had died. And there was 500 books at that stage written about the Easter Rising, and only one of them mentioned a child death.
Goodness.
Only one of them mentioned a child. So I went through newspapers, and the little thing I hit upon was, we've a great, and you've an even bigger tradition up here in newspapers where people put in memorials, and when people die, other people put in. I'm thinking of the Irish News especially. But there's a great thing down south, and it was the Evening Herald. And every family, no matter your means, a year after someone died, you would always put a memorial in the Evening Herald. Yeah. And I didn't look at the papers for April 1916, I looked at the papers for April 1970. And that's when I started getting names. And that's when I started looking for death certs. And that's when I started mentioning. The first thing I did was have service and remembrance. Yeah. But part of that was to try and get more information on the children. But then I realised when that book came out, Children of the Troubles, it was 100 years too late, because children don't have children, obviously. They've no direct descendants. And that what you're relying on was not a genealogy line going that way, it was going that way, and that way, and they were forgotten. Not through any malice, but they don't have direct descendants. Yes. And I remember saying to Freya McClements, I remember saying, and when I went to the publisher, I said, I think coming up to the 50th anniversary of the death of the first child, Patrick Rooney, shot, you remember that the RUC sprayed the flats he was living in, and I said, it's coming up to the 50th anniversary, I think before a lot of their parents die, we should try and chronicle the children, try and tell their stories, tell their hobbies, their activities, their family, their stuff.
Did you go and speak to the family?
Yeah,
every one of them?
No, not every one of them. Some of them was online, some of them was on the phone, but we hadn't. And I remember going to one family in just outside Newry, the other side of Newry, and Ray McGuigan was there, and his brother had been killed. Two of his brother and his best pal had been killed in a roadside bomb that was detonated. They thought it was a group of soldiers because they were smoking, but they weren't. And I remember Ray is still, like so many people, he's downstairs bedroom, his downstairs dining room is his bedroom with a hospital bed, and his legs have been severely damaged and these other internal injuries. And I remember Ray saying to me, because I was nervous. I wasn't nervous about doing this. I remember Ray saying, what took you so long? I want James Keenan, who was his pal. I want my brother memorialised. I want them memorialised. And that was the reaction we got from almost everybody. Were saying, we want their children memorialised. And and it was just an immense privilege to be able to meet those families in their own homes. And
must have been emotionally.
Yeah, but I remember I was doing Liveline, and what I say to people on Liveline, that's my job. My job is to try and help people. I shouldn't be tearing up, even though I feel like it some days, because of the stories, because that doesn't help people tell the stories. My job is to write that book. My job is to get that book out, get a publisher, get it out there, to try and make sure it's as accurate as possible. And I would have been very conscious of that. But I remember myself and Freya leaving houses in bits. Just the pain that's still there. So the book, I just did it to try and, at a particular time, to try and get as many children. Obviously I couldn't do everything, but the thing I do realise, the number of children, Lost Lives, an incredible book, which has a little vignette. And that was from what they call the desktop project. It was a mammoth task, which will stand to them for hundreds of years. But they did it from the newspaper report. That's the only way they could do it at the time. There was no internet, no whatever. But we discovered about 20%, an awful phrase even to use about 20% more children who weren't in Lost Lives that have been killed. Now, if that applies to all Lost Lives, I think, comes out at 3,575. That means there was over 4,000 people killed in the trouble. If you apply that same metric to it, that if it did, like three of the families that came to have come to us since the book came out, we said, we didn't find any reference anywhere. We asked Bishop Eamon Martin, very good, he got it read out in the pulpit saying there's this project, they're trying to chronicle, if you know or want to assist. So we wrote letters to all the papers and got as much out as we could. And like in one case, they said, it was never in the papers. And we said, well, there was 17 people killed that day. 17 people, which was, as you know, happened. And this would be in different incidents as well. And she said, just never reported. Because there was so much of it happening.
It's a fabulous book, and it's a very important book, I have to say. Joe, we're running out of time. I'm going to finish up with a question that you asked your guests on television. What are you going to say at the pearly gates?
Oh God, why did I not think?
You dropped up the question.
When you get to the pearly gates, what would you say to God? The first thing I said to him, is there a radio? Can we listen to the radio? You know what I say? Is there anything I could do to help? And he'd say, go in and chastise Ian Paisley or something. But I say, is there anything I can do to help? Because I'm no use otherwise.
That's fairly useful to me. Joe, can I tell you it's been an absolute privilege, sorry.
Likewise.
Sorry, Tim.
We're running out of time, but maybe there's some opportunity for
Are there any burning questions? Question that I have about another 40 here. I can keep on going, but can't see anybody. Yes, there's somebody over there. Don't know who you are.
Just a question. I'm one of those good people who has done 34 years in social work. And listening to you there, I just wonder, are you a social worker?
No.
On the radio?
No.
No.
And this sounds a little bit callous, but this is what I say to my team. There's 5 of us. We're not social workers. We're not politicians. We're not do-gooders. Our job is to make a good radio program that people listen to, that's interesting, that people listen to, and that the only way Liveline makes a difference, down south especially, is with 400,000 listeners. And the only way that phrase that Gerry talked about, or whatever people talk about, I'm going to ring Joe Duffy, the only way that gets its power from our listeners, from the number of listeners we have. And the number of listeners is based on how interesting your program is. So I can't do Ryanair every day. I can't do housing every day because I'm not a social worker. Our job is to make public service radio that people listen to. And the more people listen to, the more effective the program can be. But don't lose the run of yourselves, I say to my team. We are not firefighters, we are not paramedics, we're not nurses, we're not social workers. We are radio producers and presenters. So I'm very clear on that I'm not going to, if I set myself up as a social worker in radio, I'd say after a few weeks I wouldn't have any listeners because I think I was on my hobby horse or whatever. I trained as a radio producer, and I'm very conscious that you have to make the program varied and interesting. It's on at 1:45, has to be different than the 7 hours that went before it, as people just turn off. So I'm not, unfortunately.
Yes.
As a brother of one of the victims of the Troubles,
Yeah.
I met Joe before, my sister's here too.
Yeah.
I'd just like to thank Joe and Freya for the book they've done and the stories they've told of all the children, and you found 3 more who lost their lives in the Trouble. The stories are inspiring for people to read, just to hear there was lives lost and to hear the wee stories about them. So from a family point of view, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I can't see you because of the lights, but do you want to tell us the name of your relation?
It was John Doyle who was shot in the graveyard in Duffy.
But the inspiration for me was meeting the families, just the strength of the families, the grief of the families, the memory of the families, insisting and really ensuring that their siblings, nobody deserved to die in the Troubles. Nobody deserved to die. And we were adamant in the book as well. No matter what the child was involved in, if they were, which was very, very infrequent, but if they were, young people were transporting guns and didn't know any better or whatever, nobody deserved to die. Nobody deserved to die. And everyone deserves to be remembered.
Anyone else? No. Okay.
Now I have a list of the makeup I use for Pat Kenny, okay? I began with the Life Foundation.
There is one more job we would like you to do, Joe. I know you haven't been home from work yet. We appreciate that. But can we give Gerry and Joe a very, very
There's one for everyone in the audience. I've been dying to say that for years. So what's this first prize?
The first prize is a voucher for the garden cafe, the new garden cafe that we have opened upstairs.
So all the tickets I think are the same colour, are they? I presume they are. 151 to 155. 151 to 155. There we are.
There we go.
On the back, okay.
Well, thank you. I'll keep this one for you, okay? Yeah, thank you. Well done, well done. The next one is a gift voucher for the shop.
191 to 195. 191 to 195. Going once. 191 to 195.
No.
There we are, up the back row.
There we go. Okay, very good. We'll keep that for you. The next is a hamper with wine and all sorts of things in it.
Okay, 81 to 85.
81 to 85, there we go.
Right.
And last but not least is a copy of Joe and Freya's book, The Children of the Troubles.
And 216 to 220. 216 to 220.
216 to 220, very good. Lovely, we'll give that to you. It just leaves us to say thank you so much to both Gerry and Joe for such an entertaining evening. Our sincere gratitude and thanks for all of what we have listened to, the sincerity, the integrity of what you do, and thank you, Gerry, for being as professional as always. It was just like watching.
And by the way, very well researched. Very well researched.
So I would just like, on behalf of the St. Patrick's Centre,
Okay.
Joe, to give this as a
Thank you very
mark
much.
of our appreciation.
Thank you very much.
And Gerry. So we are going to wrap it up there. There is an opportunity, if anybody has bought a book or would like to buy a book, they're still for sale in the shop, and Joe has agreed to sign some of the books in the art gallery afterwards. So if you would like to do that, you'd be very welcome. Otherwise, thank you so much. Our next conversation with is going to be on the third week in November, third week in November, yes. And that is with a little known politician called, ex-politician called Arlene Foster. So we're going to be in conversation with Arlene on the third Thursday. So we look forward, if you want to come to that, please do get in touch with us, same format, and thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.